بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. جزاكم الله خير. Let's get started. Again, like خير. For the armor and the, the zarad and the helmet, they'll be here inshallah after salah. If you want to get dressed in it, I'll help you. Tomorrow I'm going to try to get a real sword, if they permit me, right, and other stuff. We're trying to get some foam swords so that we can maybe practice some martial arts with some people. So tomorrow, inshallah. Let's see how it goes. Right. Before I start, just one thing. You'll see on the walls in the back a link, a QR code. It's just a question that I'm asking. And I want you to answer this question. It has to do with what we're teaching. It has to do with our Muslim community. It's a very simple question, right? And it has to do with something called game theory. I know many of you didn't even hear about that. But I'll tell you about it more tomorrow after I get the results, right? So this is a very interesting, it's a very simple question. It's the following, and you can read it, right? It's you get to pick a number from 0 to 100. Pick any number, right? And what am I going to do? I'm going to gather all the numbers, 90, 80, 70, 60, and I'll take the average of that number, multiply it by half, right? If your choice was close to the result, you win. So for example, somebody chooses 90, somebody chooses 70, the average is 80, 80 divided by 2 is 40. Whomever chose 40 will win, right? And you're free to choose anything from 0 to 100, right? And I just want you, choose the number, go to the QR link, it's here, enter it, and tomorrow I'll tell you the results and what it means, right? There's a very powerful meaning behind it, but like, can we do this, right? So I have the links. I'll just, after the lecture, I'll give them to all of you. Please, and it's back on the wall, so make sure to do that, inshallah. Right. So let's return back to our lecture, inshallah. Right. Bismillah. So we saw how the Muslims were, how the Franks came, and what happened to the Muslims on the hands of the Franks. And we said it ended up that the Franks took all the cities in the coast, right, formed their kingdoms, right? And we had a situation that happened that now you have the Franks by the coast, and then you had, and this is very important, the biggest challenge why Muslims are divided. The three cities confronting the Franks is Al-Mosul, Aleppo, which is Halab, and Damascus, which is the capital of Syria. Each one of those had a ruler. One of the very interesting rulers, you don't need to remember the name, right, was the ruler of Aleppo by the name of Ridwan. Ridwan, a very interesting character. He started to kind of form an alliance with the Ismailis and started to use the assassins, if you will, as a weapon. And he started doing what? Accepting the Ismaili madhab, getting more Ismaili people in his court. And at the time, the Ismailis were looking forward, to take over Aleppo. That perhaps the city of Aleppo can be one of their cities, right? They were aspiring. Also, people feared him so much because he has the assassins, right? You have to be very careful with this man, right? But something interesting started to happen. As I said, over the years to come, I didn't describe this, we'll do this later, right? So over the years to come, an alliance started to happen. Ridwan, the leader of Aleppo, the Franks are very powerful. And he has his neighboring nations that he's fighting with. So he decided to do what? Let's have a peace treaty so that we can live together. So he sends to the Franks and says, you know what? I'm willing to have a peace treaty with you. We sign it, we're good with each other, we will form an alliance against the others. We help each other. And they sent to him with the following, 3 conditions. Number 1, you pay a yearly tribute for us, 20,000 dinar. He accepts. 2, any business transaction happening in the city of Aleppo, you pay taxes for us. Sales taxes? Can you imagine? Any business, anybody doing any business transaction in Aleppo, 5% goes to the Franks. He agrees. 3rd, most humiliating. They said, here is a big cross. Go on the biggest mosque in Aleppo and put this big cross on top of it. And he agrees. Right? And when that happened, remember, scholars are working in the background, and they'll speak more about it, right? So, when that happened, a scholar by the name of Ibn Khashab, very interesting scholar that lived in Aleppo. And this was a scholar that was very unhappy with what's going on, one that's asking Muslims to fight. When he saw this, he got really upset. So he went to the ruler, Ridwan, and told him, look, this is unacceptable. You cannot put a cross on top of a mosque. This is, and I know we're weak. I have a proposal for you. Let me go out. I will go get some help from other Muslim cities so that they will help us against the Franks. I know that we're not as powerful. It's said that he had only 500 knights or 1,000 knights. Alipo wasn't strong, right? Saying, oh, I'll help you. But allow me to go out, remove the cross, and don't worry about the Franks. I'll get help from other people. What do you think he did? Prison? He did not kill him. He did not let him, he let him go. He said, of course, you want to go and speak to people? Go ahead. Why do you think he did that? Because he was thinking, nobody's really going to come. You're going to go speak to people, you know. Nobody's going to respond. So go ahead, right? But what was going on in the background over the last 20 years? Scholars were working. Imam al-Ghazali did something really interesting. So Imam al-Ghazali, when the assassins killed Nizam al-Mulk, he saw that there is trouble in the Muslim world. And he realized that he is not working. He's preaching Islam intellectually. But he said, and he wrote a book called Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, or I forgot the name in English, it's Deliverance from Error. You can find this book of his story. He said, I looked onto myself and I found I'm preaching to people Islam, but I'm not walking the walk. I have love of status. I am greedy. I am not changing. And I realized that status, fame, because he's the deen, was actually toxic to my heart. And that I need to change. Else, I will be one of those people that on the day of judgment, you know, a alim that teaches people, but he did not change, I might end up in hellfire. It might destroy me. So Imam al-Ghazali decides to leave his position, in the top position at the time, in the Nizamiya school, and he left and he went to the area of Sham, Damascus, Jerusalem, and he worked as a janitor. Nobody knows who he is, right? And he worked for years on what? Himself. Tazkiyat al-nafs, purifying his soul, right? In that time, the Crusades happened. And he saw what the Crusaders did. Imam al-Ghazali, years later, returned back. A completely different man. A transformed man with a new message. He worked so much on himself, and he realized his analysis, and I'm again summarizing, we can actually give lectures about this. He saw what happened to the Ummah, right? And he, of course, this is not accepted. But his analysis was the following. There is a difference between the symptom and the disease. You don't treat the symptom, you treat the disease. So saying what's happening to the Ummah is a symptom. The defeats, the betrayals, this is a symptom of a deeper disease that has to do with the heart. Love of wealth and status, greed, selfishness, that we're not, and he started to see that we have diseases in the heart. And he wrote a book. And that book transformed, the teachings of the time. His most famous book is The Revival of Religious Sciences. What was special about this book? He brought the science of the outward and the inward together in one book. So you read about Salah. He'll tell you about the fiqh of Salah and the inward meaning of Salah. It's a book about the ailments of the heart and their cure, as well as their fiqh, as tawheed, as you know. So he combined a new message in it. His analysis was the following, and I'm saying it in a very simple way. When we're sick, we go to the hospital. Doctors treat us. But what happens if the doctors are sick? So he's saying that when the Ummah is sick, the scholars are the doctors of the Ummah. And he looked to the scholars of his time and he realized the scholars are themselves sick. They're preaching things. It's very easy to come and give a lecture about tawakkul. But do I have tawakkul, really? I can tell you the benefits of sadaqah. But am I hospitable? Am I generous? It's one thing to speak something, and it's one thing to embody something. And he realized that what is needed is not teaching like this in a class. This is important. In the Nizamiya school where he taught, is extremely important. You clarify the messages in the mind. So, okay, we're dealing with the mind, the intellect, the creed, right? But what about the heart? How do I change? And therefore, it's not about a lecture. It's about what? You need to accompany. We need to do more dhikr. You need to eat less. You need to be more generous. You need to serve more. You need to work on your anger. How can I implement that if we're not living together? So Imam al-Ghazali returns and he refuses to go to the Nizamiya school. I'm not going to teach there. He focused on a small group of students. And his idea was, I'm teaching a new generation of scholars. But not only the classical intellectual way, I'm living with, the concept of suhbah. We have to change on a very spiritual, deep, experiential level. We want to embody the message, right? So he focused on that. From his students came a lot of scholars. Later, the likes of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Sheikh Ahmed al-Rifa'i. You see, that's what he was doing. Those scholars were in the background teaching, right? Of the people that responded, and this again, the beginning of change, was a person in the city of Al-Mosul. His name is Mawdud. That was the commander, under the Seljuk Sultan, and he really was, got really affected by the scholars. Good Muslim, prays on time, prays all the Sunnah, prays Tahajjud, and was very adamant about, we have to resist the Crusaders. He started fighting the Franks, one of the people, and of course he wins and he loses more than he wins, but he was adamant about what? We have to do something, right? And he was a good Muslim himself, practicing, unlike the others, no drinking, nothing like that, right? So Ibn Khashab leaves Aleppo and he heads to Mawdud, knowing that, this is, and he tells him, what's happening in the city of Aleppo and the cross, and we need help. And if you come and we combine your forces from Al-Mosul with Aleppo, the two cities together, it's a unified front, it's good. And Mawdud responds, of course I will. He gathers his army and heads immediately to the city of Aleppo. What do you think happened as he approaches Aleppo? What do you think the ruler, Ridwan, did? When he saw that Ibn Khashab succeeds, right, and he's coming, he does the following. Ibn Khashab arrested, thrown in prison. The walls of the city are closed. The army of Aleppo must never enter the city. The army of Al-Mosul must never enter the city of Aleppo because they're very dangerous. He can take my city from me. You see the problem? The Franks is the lesser of two evils. And he sends to the Franks, I have an army from Al-Mosul, I need your help. And they respond and send an army forth. Mawdud at this point was faced with what? I'm trying to help, and look what happens. What do I do? Should I fight, not fight? I can't fight the armies of Aleppo and the Franks together. So he decides, okay, let me contact the city of Damascus. Maybe, right? I have an army. And he sent to the ruler of Damascus, I'm here, we need to fight. This happened with Aleppo. And of course, the ruler of Damascus says, of course, they're bad people. Why? Come to me. We can join forces. Damascus is the biggest city. Come forward, right? And I'll open the city for you. And he did that. And Mawdud goes to Damascus. They go, they start negotiating. It looks like things are good. The cities are together. And guess what happened? One Friday, right? Mawdud is going for the Friday prayer in the mosque. As he approaches, one of the Musallin in the first row jumps up with a dagger and stabs Mawdud to death. An assassin. Who do you think did that? Who told the assassins to kill Mawdud? Right? You can say the Franks. Or you can say, we know. This guy in Aleppo, he has a, and he's a, you know who it was? The ruler of Damascus. This guy. Why? Well, this is a very dangerous person. He's beloved by Muslims. He has an army. If he takes I'm afraid of him. And added benefit, by doing this, people will think, who did this? Ridwan. Okay, good idea. You get more enemies this way. So win-win, you see what I'm saying? So he ended up killing the only person at the time that was fighting the Franks. The Franks, Ibn al-Athir reports, sent a letter to the Muslims in Damascus. And the letter reads the following. إن أمة قتلت عميدها في بيت معبودها يوم عيدها كان حقا على الله أن يبيدها. They mocked the Muslims. They said a nation that kills its leader that's fighting for its cause in the house of its Lord, Friday, on the day of their Eid, the day of Friday. It's a must that their God will make them perish. The Franks sent that to the Muslims. If you're at that level, no wonder you will receive, whoever you're worshipping, he will always let you down. they mocked, right? And it looked like whenever something happens, the assassin comes, right? So it looks like things are really bad, right? Now, what happened here, this is a very important lesson on a spiritual level. The Sultan got really upset. His strongest lieutenant, his leader, Mawdud, got killed. So he got really upset at the people in Damascus. So he gathered all the armies he has. And he said, I'm going to go to the Sham area and put those people back to their position. You know, I will teach them a lesson. So he gathered a huge army, everything he has to avenge, right? And he's now going, those Muslims need to be put on their place. We need to fight the Franks. This is not acceptable. We should stand together, good things, right? To his surprise, as he approaches Damascus, he was confronted with the following scene. A joint army. The army of Aleppo on the left side, the army of Damascus on the right side, and the Franks in the center. Aleppo, Damascus, and the Franks. Joined forces to fight the city of Aleppo. What's going on? They all viewed him as a common danger. Now, what's the spiritual lesson here? Those are good people. They're trying to do change. The spiritual lesson. If I'm a person that's trying to do change, on the road to change, the thing that will frustrate me the most is what? The people I'm trying to help. Please understand that. If you're working in a masjid, and you go sometimes, and you're trying to help out, I can understand everything, but what I don't understand when the people in the masjid that I'm trying to help become the ones that fight me. Do you get it? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his message, he was not, what did he bring for Mecca? He brought only khair to them, right? What did he bring to Medina? Khair for them, khair in dunya before the akhirah. Yet they fought him. He fought them for them. There is a big difference between fighting to win over you and fighting to win you over. Now, the Sultan was so offended, he decided, this is it, this is betrayal, and he made an oath, I will never help those Muslims again. I come and help and you fight me, next time, if a Frank attacks, you know what? Khalas, I will never come back again. What's the problem in that state? Do you see the issue? I come to the masjid. I always give this example. To pray. I put my shoes outside. I walk out, my shoes got stolen. Is that what I get for helping Muslims? Ya wallahi, I'm not going to go to the masjid again. Really? You get the idea? You give charity to an organization, good Muslims, and they turn out to be fraud. شفت بقى, I will never give charity to Muslims again. Really? You get the idea? I know you were hurt, but sidq, truthfulness, it's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if everybody in Palestine sold Jerusalem, it's about Allah and His Messenger. It's about it's Masjid al-Aqsa. I don't care about what people do. That's a very serious problem on an individual level. Please, on the road of change, as we try to change, we will face tremendous frustration, not from our enemies, but from the people we're trying to help. On a family level, it's your own kid trying to help him. Don't be so frustrated to say, Ya akhi, khalas, I give up. No. If it's for the sake of Allah, we don't give up. That is sidq, right? And that was lacking, right? So that's a very important spiritual lesson, right? So that time frame, a lot of things like that happen, and you would see frustration. Nevertheless, Mawdud didn't live long enough to see Salahuddeen. He didn't live long enough to see the Aqsa Mosque liberated. But you can say he's a step on the road to change, and Allah will reward him. If I get to be like him, and I never saw change in my life, so be it. So be it. I'll die trying, and I will never give up. It's a very important spiritual lesson, right? Do not do what this Sultan Muhammad did. What I tried, and look what I get, I will never speak about it again. Don't do that. Right? This is a serious issue, even if betrayed by Muslims. Right? Now, I'm going to go forward a little bit because, again, unfortunately, it's like this class is a little bit short, so I have to skip some events. So, the second point of change, decades later, eventually, Ridwan, the ruler of Aleppo, passes away. He dies. But then something really interesting happened. The Ismailis were really gathered in Aleppo. Once he died, The Ismailis saw that as an opportunity. We can take the city of Aleppo, right? That's a good opportunity. And they spread, and he gave them power and strength. So they started contacting leaders from elsewhere. Come, we'll let you in, gather, we can take the city of Aleppo. But Ibn Khashab is there, the Muslim scholar. They need help. So they sent to the Franks. And they said, you know what? If we are in power in Aleppo, we promise we will pay taxes to you. We will give you a number of forts for free, a number of small cities for free, a number of plantations for free. If we're in power, you will get wealthy too. Send an army that helps putting us in power. It's our best interest. And they responded. The Franks sent an army, and they laid siege to Aleppo. At that point, the scholar Ibn Khashab realized how dangerous the situation is. He leads a movement, leads the people, again, fiery speeches, gathering people, speaking against the Ismailis, removing them from power. But he realizes, I need help. I can't resist the armies of the Franks. What the Franks did, by the way, in this siege, like you can read in the books, I mean, we have details. I'm going to tell you two things. I mean, because we see those things today. They go, they siege the city, they go to one of the, Muslim graveyard, they dig out some of the bodies. And they tie some of the Muslim bodies with a rope in their horse and start dragging it in front of the Muslims of the city. And they mock and they start saying, look, astaghfirullah, this is your Muhammad. One of them got the Quran, tied it in a rope on the tail of his horse. And the horse would go on the Quran. And he would laugh and tell Muslims, look what's happening in your Quran. It's interesting. I mean, we see it's not new. It happened, right? And the people in Aleppo are boiling, but they can't do anything. So Ibn Khashab decides, we need help from outside. So he takes a delegation, and he starts to, again, I need help. He goes to the city of Al-Mosul again. In Al-Mosul, there was, again, the follower of Mawdud was a person very much like him. His name is Al-Bursuqi. You don't need to remember the name. But described righteous, prays Sunnah, fasts, right? Same style, trying to fight the Franks wherever he can, right? So he went to him. He found him sick. And it's almost terminal sick. He was really sick. And Al-Bursuqi makes an oath. If Allah makes me recover, by Allah I would respond to this call. And subhanallah, they make dua for him. In 3 days, he fully recovers. And he fulfills his oath. He gathers all his army and soldiers and gives a great speech. We are going to help our brothers. Yes, before they betrayed. I want you to notice what he's saying. Before they killed Mawdud, right? Because some people say, after what you did, you deserve it. You know, tashafi? They're Muslims. No, I don't care. I'm doing this for the sake of Allah. Yeah, they betrayed Mawdud before. It's not a reason for me to stop. We're going. And he gathers an army. And he leads her army to the city of Aleppo. When the Franks saw the army, they retreated, formed their lines for a battle. Bursuqi decides to do something interesting. He decides, I'm not going to fight them. Let me in the city. Why? He said the purpose was to save the city of Aleppo. And the second thing, the city needs help. And we will fortify the city. We'll rebuild the city. We'll gather more army. And next year, we're going to go out and fight them so that we can win. And he did that. And the Franks realized now the army of Aleppo, Al-Mosul is inside Aleppo, it is strong. There is a reform movement, there is a scholar there. And immediately the Franks leave. And the Ismailis' hope got crushed. Now he takes control of the city, right? And he starts, and I want you to, it's not about fighting, it's about building. He starts building the infrastructure of the city. Because he realized something interesting happened. For the first time, 2 Muslim cities are together. The biggest problem, Muslims are not united. We cannot fight the Franks, everyone by himself, something that we see today. If we are going to defeat them, it's not Aleppo that's going to do it. It's not the people that's under the siege, the people living in Gaza, here, they're going to liberate Jerusalem. Are you kidding me? And the armies of Egypt are doing nothing? This is not how it happens, right? So he realized if we are to do a real change, it's about unity. So he started, let's unite the 2 cities. Let's work on the infrastructure. And next year we're going to go out. And next year he's going to fight. And he starts doing that. And he starts, really a reform starts to happen in the city of Aleppo. And people now are like, looking forward. This is someone who's fighting, someone who's righteous. it looks a step forward. Guess what happened? Yeah. One day, Bursuqi sees a dream, and in his dream, he says, I saw a dream today, 5 dogs attacked me. And I warded off 2 of them, but the rest of them got the best of me. And people tell him, please stay home. And he says, I can't miss Salat al-Jama'ah for any other reason. And he opens the Mus'haf, and he reads from Surah Al-Ahzab, Inna amra Allahi kana qadaran maqdura. The command of God will happen no matter what. Says, see, I will never miss Fajr Salah. I will never miss Jum'ah for any reason. Fiqhan, that's not allowed. I will go. Right? And he starts walking to the masjid. And guess what happened? In the masjid, 5 people jump on him. And he gets his sword out. And he succeeds in warding off 2, and the rest jump on him and kills Al-Bursuqi. The assassins, again, the Ismailis were really upset. This is the man that took Aleppo away from us. So by killing him, their method is what? We're back again to the chaos, right? And it didn't stop there. Who was the second man that kept at us? Their biggest enemy now. The scholar that speaks against us. Ibn Khashab. Friday prayers. Ibn Khashab giving a ceremony on the pulpit in the middle of the khutbah. Man from the front stands up, walks to the pulpit, stabs Ibn Khashab in front of everybody. The assassins used to do their crimes in public. Why? It's about what? Spreading fear. They want everybody to know. They want terrorists nowadays, if you notice, one of their things is what? When they do a terrorist act, they want CNN come send the pictures everywhere. You notice that? It's the same idea, right? So they always did their crimes in public so everybody knows that we're there. Right? And it didn't stop there. The other scholar that was speaking at the time, publicly, Imam Al-Harawi, the Qadi of Jerusalem, right? He was actively speaking on another Friday. Same thing. One of the assassins come on the pulpit, they get rid of him. They kill him as well. Right? Before going forward, I just want to quickly mention this. This is an important point on the road of change, right? We notice there is 2 styles, 2 types of scholars. I would say the Ibn Khashab style and Al-Ghazali style. What is the difference? Ibn Khashab focuses on the current issues, which is very important. Activism, emotionally fiery speeches, right? Invokes people to do something. Fight, don't stop, right? He's actively involved, right? So that's his style. Call for jihad directly, right? He's involved in today's affair. Those are very important groups of scholars. But we had something else happening in the background, and we'll see it in the map. At that time, the students of Imam Al-Ghazali started preaching in the background. The Ghazali way of teaching. One of the biggest scholars of the time, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani, was in Baghdad. Sheikh Ahmad Al-Rifa'i started teaching, right? Many scholars started teaching the way of Imam Al-Ghazali. The way of Imam Al-Ghazali was what? Wait a minute. It's about an internal reform. We need to change the hearts of... It's a long battle. It's not a battle of today. It will take years, but we have to start now. So you had another group of scholars that they were treating not the defeat, the affinity of defeat. Why are Muslims that way? Why do we get defeated? Why do every time we swallow the bait? Why? We have a problem. So they focused on a long-term solution. They provided a blueprint that's independent of one person. You kill that scholar, it doesn't matter. We have others that are following this blueprint. And the change is not, we're going to change the hearts of people. Eventually, the people that we change, they're going to be the wazirs, the soldiers, the ministers, the women. They notice people are miserly. They're not spending. We need to treat that. So they were very actively involved in the background. Right? It is this movement from Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani. Many of the followers of Salahuddin and Nuruddin Zinki came from those schools. As a matter of fact, and I'll just point to one sheikh, I'll mention this. So you have Imam Al-Ghazali. We said Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani appeared at the time. So Sheikh Abdul Qadir is known. His teachings are available today. Praised by all scholars, by the way, including Ibn Taymiyyah. Right? Ibn Taymiyyah has a book. He explains the book of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani as the book of Ilm al-Suluk. If you're seeking the path of experiential knowledge, this is the way. Right? But one other scholar, and I mentioned his name, so Sheikh Abdul Qadir, okay, something amazing happened here. Before that, the science of tazkiyat al-nafs was something that you do on a personal level. So before this era, if I want to work on my heart and my akhlaq, you go to the sheikh, right? He's your murabbi, you meet with him one-on-one. So this is for a serious group of students. Sheikh Abdul Qadir, for the first time, took the science of tazkiyat al-nafs to the public. So he started preaching, the message of Imam al-Ghazali in a way that the masses can understand. And that was the beginning of this movement of Sheikh Ahmed al-Rifa'i, how to take tazkiyat al-nafs into the pulpit and work on every single one. That was his contribution. He was known because he was in Baghdad, right? Another sheikh, and I'm pointing his name, and we have to give him credit, Adi ibn Musafir. This sheikh is as influential as Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. However, he did something different. He did not go to Baghdad. He went to Kurdistan, an area called Hikar. This area, there are Muslims there, but they're known to be bandits, cutthroats. Downtown Los Angeles? Can you imagine if a scholar leaves Irvine, Sheikh Mustafa Omar leaves Irvine, goes to downtown LA, and then in 10 years, downtown LA becomes like Irvine? What would you say? How did you do that? It wasn't safe, right? What did you do? There were gangs there. So Sheikh Adi ibn Musafir went into this group. The Hikaris were bandits, cutthroats, very unsafe. He left and he went and lived in that area. In 10 and 20 years, a transformation happened. He transformed the whole area. The Hikaris became so religious, believed in him so much, they changed so much. The Hikaris and the Ruwadiyya wal Hikariya, they're the majority of the army of Nuruddin Zinki and Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi. That's where they came from. Now the interesting thing for me is what did he teach? I can find the books of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. I looked for the books of Sheikh Adi ibn Musafir, unfortunately, because he was not in a big city. We don't have access. We don't know what he taught. But it must have been similar to the other sheikh, right? But the reason I'm mentioning him, although he's not known, nobody knows him, nobody praises him. Him working on the bandits, those were the people that later you will see their names, will liberate Jerusalem. Right? He transformed hundreds. Sheikh Abdul Qadir says, on my hands, more than 100,000 robbers and cutthroats repented. That's how influential he was. Right? So this was happening in the background. Right? I'll tell you one thing, one interesting story like that happens at this time. So before, people were very miserly. People were not giving at all. One of the messages they focused on is what? Give al-badh. Learn to give for the sake of Allah. Learn to give. Give your time. Give your money. Give your wealth, right? Teaching people generosity. Be generous, right? So one of the stories is at the time of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, a woman was going to get married, right? And she took her to-be husband, took him to Sheikh Abdul Qadir and told him the following. Look at this. This man proposed to marry me, but he doesn't have much to give me as a dowry. When you get married, you ask for, what are you going to ask for? How much? She said, so my dowry is, he works in your school for free for 1 year. Can you imagine if a sister is going to get married and you tell your husband, okay, here's my dowry. Go work for care for free for 1 year. That's my dowry. But it tells you the nature of people of this time, right? So change was starting to happen at the time of al-Bursuqi. Now the interesting part, I'm going to skip this, a new era happened. The follower of al-Bursuqi was the start of a change. A man by the name of Imaduddin Zinki. Imaduddin Zinki, again, you see the people are starting to change. He's not a scholar, but he respected scholars a lot. And he again saw al-Bursuqi, and he saw that the Muslims need, his message was the following. He was very clear, and I'm summarizing. He said the problem of the Muslims, they're not united. So he said there are 3 things that are important. 1, unity. Muslims have to unite. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. We have to unite. We cannot be like that. Right? 2, justice is extremely important. If there is no justice, there is no success. It's the rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But number 3, he is a soldier. He used to live with his soldiers in tents where, the armor all the time, beloved by soldiers. So his method was, I'm going to do that with force. So if you make a crime, basically, I'm going to use harsh punishments to reform Muslims. So I need to unite Muslims. How am I going to achieve that? With the sword. I'm going to fight those traitor Muslims, get their cities, unify them using what? My army, right? Because we need to unite. So his character is unity, justice, but his thing was harsh, soldier-like. So for example, his soldiers, before that, the soldiers were almost mercenaries. He said, this is not acceptable at all. Soldiers that work for me, I will take care of you. I'll give you estates, I'll take care of your kids, but in return, if I hear that you did any injustice to one of the farmers, you know what was the punishment? Crucifixion. Can you imagine how he dealt with? So you're a soldier of Imad al-Din, which means what? I'll give you an estate, I'll give you land, I'll take care of you. If you die, I'll take care of your family and your wife and your kids. Excellent benefits, but in return, the one thing I will never accept, injustice against a Muslim, never. You are soldiers, you have to be disciplined. So his army was now a very disciplined army. So he started justice, and people feared him, right? Some of the Muslim scholars actually criticizes his harshness. So yes, he had good intentions. He wanted something for Allah, but that's too harsh, right? And again, change happens gradually. So Imad al-Din started what? We really need the scholars, we need unity, and we really need to have discipline and justice. So he started expanding, right? And he noticed the city that's outside is Damascus. I really need to get the city of Damascus, right? And he tried, and then eventually he gathered all his armies, marched to the city of Damascus. What do you think the ruler of Damascus did? Very obvious to you at this point. Now, this is a big threat. So he contacted the kingdom of Jerusalem, the Franks. And he said, let's have a joint allegiance. I'm your buddy. We've been good for years. We have to form an alliance against Imad al-Din. He's a dangerous person. And the Franks came to his help. The siege of Damascus, 1 year. And Damascus is a very well-fortified city. It's the capital of Sham. Imad al-Din failed to take the city of Damascus because of that, right? So he was very bitter against the ruler, right? That had the Franks fight him and, the betrayals and what have you. But then Imad al-Din all of a sudden made a very interesting change of plan. He said, maybe it's time. Maybe I have enough forces to deal a blow for the Franks in a big way. So he looked. Maybe it's time to attack the Franks. Which city should I attack? What do you think which city he picked? Jerusalem is good, but Jerusalem is... Here is a very important concept, and we learned this through the class, and tomorrow I'm going to demonstrate it through swords, by the way. I'm going to get 2 swords, and the concept of a counterattack. If he attacks Jerusalem, what happens? If you attack, what will... Jerusalem is their capital. Everybody is going to... Are you ready? You get the point? Are you ready for that? Are you ready for the counterattack? If not, then don't do it. Right? Do you see the idea? I'll give you a very simple example. Ramadan. I always say that. We work a lot. Shaitan our enemy is shamed. Work a lot. The last 10 nights, what do we do? MashaAllah. 10 nights, we fast. We put all the energy. Right? Everything we have. Right? The day of Eid comes. How are we? All energy is gone. But what happens on the day of Eid? What do you think Shaitan will do? You have been winning for 30 days. The day of Eid, he will attack in the fierce. You're going to face a huge attack. But I expended all my resources. I don't take into account the counter-attack. The day of Eid comes, I'm sleeping, I'm not in the masjid. I stop the qiyam, and guess what happens? 3-4 days, I'm back to where I was. A good Muslim that understands strategy and game theory understands, no, I don't do that. The last 10 nights, I don't put all my energy. I save some of my energy. And the day of Eid is the biggest battle. It starts, I pray in the masjid. It starts, I will make qiyam that night. It will start, for the next 5 days, I have to encounter the attack of Shaitan, right? Else, I did not win, I lost. Right? So the city that Imad al-Din, and it's very obvious, look at the city of Edison. It's between Aleppo and Al-Mosul. It's a protrusion. It's a small city. That's the one I'm going to attack. So he surprises the Franks. He waits till the ruler's out on a hunting trip, right? He gathered his forces and marches again, disciplined forces, lays siege to the city of Edessa. And an interesting thing they described, again, he had his disciplined army with new techniques. His army did something really interesting for the first time. They did not use just catapults. They had a new technique, an engineering brigade. They called them al-Naqabin. So they would cover themselves with armor, like a tank, and they would walk to the wall of the city, right? And once they reach the wall, they start digging and go under the foundation of the city, under the foundation of the wall. And they would put wooden planks under the foundation. And then they would burn the wood. You get it? You go under, you have the wall, you go under, right? And then you put wood. So now the wall is resting on wood. You burn the wood. What happens to the stones? So once they collapse, you have a breach. And that's what they did in the city of Edessa. This was a new technique that they used. The wall was breached, and the army of Imad al-Din succeeds in entering the city of Roha, or Edessa. For the first time, this is the year 539, right? The Muslim takes one of the major cities from the Franks. Right? Imad al-Din didn't realize what he did. That sent waves of hope throughout the Muslim Ummah. There is hope and there is an ability to resist. We should not give up. Right? And Imad al-Din now appears as the hero of the Muslims that liberated one of the cities, the city of Edessa. Now, two things happen here. The concept of counterattack. What do you think will happen in Europe? The news of the city of Edessa will reach Europe. How do you think? See, this is how we need to think. How will Europe react? Another crusade is going to happen. In few years, Imad al-Din better prepare. Because that's the expected reaction. When you do an action, you have to study your opponent expected reaction. If you don't, we fail. It's like chess. You make a move, what will he think? Right? So Europe, now the Pope indeed gathers, orders the kings. How come the Muslims succeeded? The kings of Europe, you have to go. A second crusade is forming. Gather your armies. You have to head there right away. We have to take the city back, right? In the meantime, Imad al-Din starts his efforts. Let's now get more cities to join. Now that I did what I did, more cities, and he starts again expanding his his kingdom, if you will. By the way, this is something interesting. If you go to the castles in Europe, right, you always find the castle with what around it? A moat. What's the function of the moat? Beside crocodiles, there's no crocodile. Yeah, it's a barrier. But they learned something. This idea of digging under the wall. If I put a moat, you can't do that. So the Franks learned something or two from the Muslims, right? And it became a common technique now, that you have a fort, if you can, you put a moat around it so nobody can do this digging under the wall stuff, right? So it's interesting how, things that happen in the Middle East affects Europe, right? Next event, Imad al-Din, one night, goes to sleep. His servant gets a knife and stabs Imad al-Din to death. Who is he? The assassins, who did it? Nobody knows. There are theories. Some say, the Orientalists, of course, yeah, Imad al-Din was harsh. He was harsh against his servant, and his servant got offended, so he did that. See, it's a theory, right? Some say, which I think is more, he was attacking a fort, and the people in the fort told him, you will see what will happen to you. And the person, the servant that stabbed him, went and sought asylum with that fort. Most likely, I don't know, maybe it's them that they contact the assassins, get rid of Imad al-Din. We don't know why, who. We really don't. But we know this happened and Imad al-Din died. And again, you see, another setback, right? The worst part was the following. Once Imad al-Din died, the Franks took the opportunity. The city of Edessa. They gathered their forces, attacked, called the Christians who were living there, Armenians, delivered the city, and they opened the gate, and the Franks took the city of Edessa back. And at that point, it seemed again, back to square one, right? But hope, wallahi, this was the time of change. What happened next was something that transformed the whole region. The children of Imad al-Din. He wasn't a scholar, but he admired scholars. So naturally, what he did, he sent his kids where? to be taught by scholars. So he sent his son, Nuruddin Zinki, to be taught by the greatest scholars of the time, the Nizamiya schools, right? His son was taught by the greatest hadith scholar of the time, a name well known and well respected, Al-Hafidh ibn Asakir. Ibn Asakir is one of the greatest scholars of hadith that is known. He had a book, when I was preparing this, Ibn Asakir has a book called The History of Damascus, Tarikh Dimashq. So I said, let me get the book. I'm preparing the history of Damascus, it's a good book. So I go to Jarir bookstore and say, I want the book of Ibn Asakir. Says, which one? I said, Tarikh Dimashq. And Jarir told me, okay, yeah, $1,000. It's like, what? $1,000? What? I said, do you know what book you're asking for? It's 80 volumes. Like, what? But this is the type of scholar. Foolish me, I didn't have enough reverence to the scholar. I'm like, he is writing a book, Tarikh Dimashq. What do you expect? 80 volumes. He has two-volume books, a book of 2 volumes. You know what it is? The teachers that taught him hadith. 80 of them were women. Women contributed in the time. The scholars that taught Ibn Asakir, 80 of them were hadith women scholar. Nizamiya schools again, right? So Ibn Asakir is one of the teachers of Nuruddin. Nuruddin Zinki was a full scholar. Followed the Hanafi fiqh, knows usul, wrote books, and he was, and you will see his character, one of the most amazing rulers and figures that we had in history. Nuruddin Zinki is greater than Salahuddin, and you will see, right? Just the way he entered the region, by the way, this is what Ibn al-Athir says about him. Ibn al-Athir is a historian who wrote Al-Kamil. He says, I studied the history of all the kings and all the rulers. And after Al-Khulafa al-Rashidin and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, I saw no one that is more righteous and more just than Nuruddin Zinki. So he puts him on the caliber of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. And he was, rahimahullah, really awliya from awliya Allah. You will see. This man transformed the nation. He is the teacher of Salahuddin, as you will see. Right? So the way he entered, right, was actually very admirable. Edessa fell, and Muslims were, okay, we're back to square one. Nuruddin Zinki does not lose time. Orders everybody. Gather all the knights that I have. Everybody has 2 horses. Nighttime, full gallop towards the city of Edessa. No sleeping. If the horse gets tired, leave it and take the other horse. He reaches the city of Edessa at Fajr time. The Franks are celebrating, drinking, He surprises them, attacks the city, succeeds in regaining the city from the Franks again. And he doesn't stop. Next day, goes out of the city, starts attacking the Frankish forts around the city, taking a fort after the other. For the next year, he did not stop. The message he gave the Franks, what? Don't think Imaduddin dies and we're done. On the spot, I'm there, I took Roha back, or Edessa, and I'm attacking and I'm winning. Right? So the way he enters is like, people were like awed by him. This Nuruddin Zinki, right? Nuruddin, and I'll describe him a little bit, but one thing I want you to know for now. He was in one way different than his father. His father was what? Unity, justice, harshness. Nuruddin was what? His father was a soldier. You go to Imaduddin's Majlis, it's full of what? Commanders. People with helmets and, the army and generals, and, and he used to be intense. Nuruddin was a scholar. So the difference was the following. He respected scholars so much. So these harsh treatments, Sharia, everything has to abide by Sharia. I do not exceed Sharia that much. It's not only, and I'll tell you one key element. When we say we need to unite, that's right. Do you know what's missing from that equation? Unite on what? Because we tried uniting. We're the Arabs. The Arab nations, the 60s and the 70s. If you're Egyptian or Nasser's era, right? Syria and Egypt, Arabs. The Arab nationalism. The Quran says to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, هو الذي أيدك بنصره وبالمؤمنين وألف بين قلوبهم لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بينهم ولكن الله ألف. Allah says to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it is Allah that aided you with His victory and with the hearts of the believers. And it's Allah that made the hearts of the believer unite together. If you were to spend everything on earth trying to unite the hearts of just the Arabs, you will not be able to do so. Only Allah can. So Nuruddin realized unity is not just about unity. United about what? So he's very clear. The way to unite the hearts of people is we have to unite وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ on La ilaha illallah, not nationalism. It's not a Kurdish problem. It's not a Palestinian problem. It's a Muslim problem. So we unite. Even people from Morocco, they came, and Allah, it's very interesting. He contacted scholars in Morocco, and you would see a lot of people from Morocco coming fighting with Nuruddin Zenki and Salahuddin. It does not matter your ethnicity or religion. We are Muslims. One flag, one God, one rule. La ilaha illallah, Sunni Islam, Sharia. We unite. And the way to unite people that he used is what? I need to unite the hearts of people, not by the sword, which we'll see. So he has a very different caliber, and you will see his character is just amazing. But then, so Nuruddin Zenki appears on the scene, right? Next thing that happened is what? Remember the counterattack? Immediately, he faces what? The Crusaders landed, more than 100,000. They gathered. You're facing a new crusade. And his question, what are they going to attack? Where are they going to attack? They claim they're coming to attack the city of Edessa, right? That we took. So he's preparing, they're going to attack me. Maybe they attack my capital, Aleppo, right? Guess what happened? The Franks arrived, the kings of Europe, and they look, what? The city of Edessa is too small. We gathered all those armies and our wealth from Europe. It's such a small city. We need something that makes it worthwhile. Which city should we attack? The biggest city is Damascus. So let's attack Damascus. The king of Jerusalem tells him, wait a minute, that's our buddy. That's our, the one that we have allegiance with. That's the one we help each other. And they tell him, what's a word to an infidel? A word to an infidel means nothing. We will attack him. And they gather their forces. And they decide to attack the capital, the city that resisted Imad al-Din, the city that fought Imad al-Din, the father of Nuruddin Zenki, for a year. Now the Franks are attacking the city. The ruler of Damascus, he sends to Nuruddin Zenki, help, the Franks are attacking me. What's the response of Nuruddin? Remember Sultan Muhammad earlier? I will never help you again. Remember that? Now we see a different response. Nuruddin could have said, you deserve it. See, that's what you get. Why should I endanger myself? See, it's a local problem. It's the Syrian problem. I'm Iraq. This is Syria. Who cares? Those are Muslims. And the ruler is a traitor. I cannot let Muslims fall to the Franks, even if he responded. And he said, I'm coming with all my army to help you. And I'm not interested in removing you from power. Right? Of course, he refuses to let Nuruddin Zenki go inside the city. No way. Right? So you have to stay outside. So Nuruddin comes, and you have the Franks surrounding the city of Damascus, and now the army of Nuruddin Zenki gathers around and Nuruddin starts a very interesting campaign, consistent, continuous battles, day and night. Nuruddin Zenki was a proponent of Qiyam al-Layl. So his soldiers were trained to stay awake during the night. So he made it a point. We attack them day and night. Day and night. Harb al-Istinzaf, just bleed them to death. And the war dragged. It wasn't one battle. He made it a point, I'm going to just agonize them. And the Franks now are like, the city of Damascus is well fortified. Now you have Nuruddin Zenki with all the army around us. The situation is not looking good. The ruler of Damascus sends a message to the Franks, telling the king of Jerusalem, what did you do? Those new people coming, those kings, if they take Damascus, they're probably going to take Jerusalem next. It's not to your best interest. I'll give you this fort. I'll give you this much of money if you leave. And then he sends the kings of Europe, said, look, you see, Nuruddin, that is the king of the Muslims. If you attack me, I will deliver the city of Damascus to him. Do you want me to do that? You get what he's threatening with? It's not in your best interest. You want Nuruddin to have all the 3 cities? I don't think so. So I have a deal for you. Why don't you leave Damascus alone? I'll give you the fort of Banyas and the city of this and the city of that, and I'll give you 100,000 dinars, and you can go attack another city. What is he referring to? Have Aleppo. Take the money, take those forts, and the Franks agreed. You see, the one that's helping you, he betrays again, right? And the Franks leave, and they Later, what Nuruddin Zenki, by the way, was amazing. He attacked the Franks and he defeated them. He killed some of their major leaders. The second crusade, and I'm going quickly here, I'm not going through the details of the battles, which we have, by the way. The second crusade failed. Nuruddin Zenki succeeded in defending the city of Damascus and defeating the second crusade. When this happened, I want you to understand the effect on the Muslims, right? Nuruddin Zenki is a Muslim hero. And let me a little bit describe his character, right? Nuruddin Zenki is a scholar, as I said, right? His method was Muslims, again, the same way. Reform happens by schools. In the city of Aleppo, you notice the Ismailis are there. He built 8 schools. Not 1, not 2, 8 schools. All with endowments, free teaching. This is how I resist the Ismaili movements, right? Every single city of Nuruddin Zenki, a school, scholars, gathered scholars all around. His majlis was a majlis of ilm. They describe his majlis was attended by Hafid ibn Asakir himself, you know, the greatest hadith scholar. So they describe that if you attend with Nuruddin Zenki, it's all turbans. And see, there is not a single word of ghiba. Everybody is silent. To the extent one time, one of his commanders, the military leaders, got offended. You know, like, we're fighting and he keeps favoring the scholars. He was jealous. So he went to Nuruddin Zenki and he started bashing some of the scholars. You know, those people, you know, we do everything and they have this. And he started saying what? Backbiting. So Nuruddin Zenki listened. And then when the man finished, he told him the following. He said, Ya hadha. That's how he called him. Oh, this. Ya hadha, not even with his name. The man you're backbiting has 2 good qualities. That's ilm and deen. So even if what you said about him is right, shouldn't I be patient over such a small defect, taking into account those great 2 qualities? As for you and the likes of you, you have neither ilm nor deen. And you have so many bad qualities. And I'm patient over you. And by Allah, I don't even believe what you said. If you ever come back again and backbite anyone in my majlis, I will punish you myself. No ghiba. One time, a scholar and a poet entered onto him and admonished Nuruddin publicly. Nuruddin is a very pious person. By the way, he used to pray, of course, reading Quran, hadith, right? Every night, he would pray 1/3 of the night, sleep 1/6 of the night, and then worship 1/6. He prayed 2/3 of the night every single night. His salary, he insisted, the salary of the Sultan. You know minimum wage? What's the minimum wage in California? $17? So Biden should take $17. That's what he did. What's the minimum salary in my kingdom? That's my salary. And then he gave it all away. He worked with his hands, and that's what he ate from. It's a very pious person, not interested in the life of this world. One time, this scholar and poet entered and bashed Nuruddin publicly. Why? Taxes. Taxes were very common at the time. Egyptians, you know, in Egypt, people were taxed for everything, including drinking from the river Nile. Poverty in Egypt at the time, it was, reports are people are eating dogs and cats in Egypt because of the lack of money. It was an economical crisis at the time, right? So the rulers used to tax people. You know how it is. What's the taxes in California, by the way? How much do you pay? So Nuruddin Zenki, people were taxing. So the scholar came to him and said, taxes are not allowed in Islam. It's haram. What are you doing? Why are you taxing people? We have zakah, we have sadaqah, we have other taxes. What are you going to tell Allah on the day of judgment? Because there is a hadith about this. This is not accepted. And Nuruddin Zenki took him by surprise. He wasn't paying attention. And on the spot, Nuruddin Zenki cries and he orders, write to all my rulers and all the cities, a book from Nuruddin Zenki on the spot. All taxes are abolished. Muslims are going to pay 0% taxes, and apologize to the Muslims and tell them all the money I took from them, I spent on fighting the Franks. Can you imagine if you have a new governor or a new president and the first thing he tells people, how much? 0% taxes. What would you do? So can you imagine what happened to people? Really? 0% taxes? The economy thrived. So Nuruddin Zenki, of course, his bravery, his justice. I mean, you can go on, and you will see it. But like one of the main things is that he built the infrastructure. He built agriculture, schools, pharmacies, hospitals. So he was a builder. It's not only a warrior that destroys, he's a builder, right? But one of the main things was Sharia. Unlike his dad, he removed all, those harsh treatment. He said, no, Islam gave us the rules. We treat people according to the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing more, nothing less. Right? So we do things not only for Allah, but with the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? He contacted scholars all over the cities. Right? And scholars love Nuruddin Zinki. Now, why did this matter? Again, by the way, one interesting thing. The year 541, to 545 when the Second Crusade happened, right? When Nuruddin Zinki was fighting. One of the books of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Al-Fath al-Rabbani, those are his admonishments that he used to give in Baghdad. And somebody wrote them down. The book is called Al-Fath al-Rabbani, right? It's available, right? So we have this book today. And I was like, okay, while this was happening, and the crusade was there, what was Sheikh Abdul Qadir teaching in Baghdad? What was the topics? So I just made a list here for you. This is what Sheikh Abdul Qadir was speaking about. And I want you to notice what he's focused on. I'm not objecting on God. Rida bi qada'illah. Poverty of the heart. Not wishing to be rich. Repentance. Reasons to love Allah. Patience. Right? Truthfulness. Tawheed. Getting the love of the worldly life out of the heart. Praiseworthy anger versus blameworthy anger. Arrogance. Thoughts. Contentment. Those were the majalis of Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. He saw those things are the things that people need the most. So it's very interesting to bring this in. Now, the turn of event is the following. The Franks realized Nuruddin Zinki is very powerful. And by the way, every single year, you would see Nuruddin Zinki attacking the Franks and winning and consistently, right? His power is building, his commanders, his army is getting stronger. So the Franks realized we can't do anything in the north, but what about Egypt? Egypt is getting weaker and weaker. So an army moved from Jerusalem and attacked the city of Asqalan. And they take the city of Asqalan from the Ismailis. When this happened, it's very dangerous. Why? Now they're at the borders of Egypt. Just beside Gaza. Gaza and Rafah, So Nuruddin Zinki was very disturbed. If the Franks, it looks like they're going to take Egypt. I need to stop them. I need to free Asqalan. But Damascus is on the way, right? So he sent to the ruler of Damascus, listen, I just need a base. I'm not going to do anything. You can stay in power. Just let me pass by. I just need, logistics and, food and stuff, and I'll leave you alone. But I need access so I can attack. The ruler of Damascus sends to the Franks. Nuruddin Zinki is coming. He's a source of danger. We need to unite. And the Franks respond. And the huge army of the Franks appear outside the city of Damascus. They start destroying lands, robbing farmers from their property, and the ruler of Damascus, okay, fine. As long as I'm safe, let them do. Right? So they sent to Nuruddin Zinki. And Nuruddin Zinki responded. He immediately took his army because he saw what's happening, right? And he went towards the city of Damascus. He wrote a letter to the ruler of Damascus, which we have, which is very interesting. And this letter, he tells him the following. I did not come here to wage war against you. I'm not interested in, he's not like his dad. It's not about you or your seat or anything. This is not why I'm here, right? This is not, but the farmers have been despoiled of their goods and separated from the children by the Franks. And no one is there to defend them. And since Allah gave me power and strength, it is not permissible for me, while I have this force, to stay back and do nothing. I can't say if I have all those armies, I just make dua for them. Dua is good. But if I'm the one with armies, making dua is not good enough. I have a responsibility to move my army. See what he's saying? It's not permissible for me, with all the resources that Allah gave me, to sit and watch and do nothing. I have to come to their aid. And he says, I'm aware of your degeneration and what you did with the Franks, something that does not please Allah or please any Muslim. Right? But I'm not here to fight you. Now, what Nuruddin Zinki did was something interesting. He unified people by unifying their hearts. He sent to the scholars of Damascus the same letters. I'm not interested in bloodshed. If I attack Damascus, how many people will die? It's a fortified city. It's a massacre. I don't want to do that. But you see your ruler. And he started, and he's a scholar himself, and he started communicating with the scholars. Scholars loved Nuruddin Zinki so much because he came to their aid. They started preaching to the people. And he started unifying the scholars of Damascus. And they sent back to Nuruddin Zinki, we're fed up with our ruler. We know some of the soldiers, and we know the people, and they're ready for you. Tonight, we're going to tell some of the soldiers to open one of the gates. And once that happens, come and we'll open the gate for you. And that's what happened. That night, the soldiers of Damascus, with the scholars, open one of the gates. Nuruddin Zinki enters the city of Damascus. And he opens the city with not a single drop of blood. Nuruddin Zinki succeeds for the first time in hundreds of years of unifying the three cities in Sham: Damascus, Aleppo, and Mosul. He did what his father couldn't do. Through what? I want you to notice that. Through ihsan, through scholarship. Scholars is a powerful aid. Reforming scholarship is essential. Right? And that's what he did. That's what led to this unity of Muslims. Right? And Nuruddin now had, Syria is unified. Nevertheless, he wasn't always successful. The Franks realized that Nuruddin is extremely dangerous. So they prepared a trap for him. They gathered all their armies, because yearly he would attack. So they decided this year they gathered all their armies, expecting his attack. And they took Nuruddin Zinki by surprise in the Battle of Waqat al-Baqi'ah. Right? He didn't expect them to be there with that number. He was there Fajr time before, and they attacked. And they took him by surprise to the extent they almost captured Nuruddin Zinki himself. One of the soldiers gave him the horse, and he started, running away, fleeing, and it was a disaster for the army. He got really defeated in Waqat al-Baqi'ah. But something really interesting happened in this battle that tells you about Nuruddin Zinki. He started running away with some of his soldiers. Then a couple of kilometers, he stopped and started calling all his knights. And 1,000 of his knights came to him. So he started to pitch a camp. Now, one of the scholars, Qutbuddin al-Naysaburi, was with him. And he said, Ya Sayyidi, it's not a good idea. The Franks are just few kilometers. And they will see you. And they will come. And they might, And he said, wait. If Allah gives me 1,000 knights, I'm not afraid to fight them if they come. And if they come, I will fight myself. He used to fight with 2 swords, by the way. He's one of those people that, you command the horse with your legs, 2 swords and a shield, and, he's a very powerful, He said, I will go and fight them. And the scholar said, Billah, ya Sayyid, don't do that. I'm afraid something might happen to you. You're so essential. People love you. You unified the Muslims. If you die in this battle, what will happen to us? We don't want you to die. Don't, please. It's too risky. Don't. At that point, Nuruddin Zinki falls into tears and then says something really powerful. He tells that to the scholar. Man Nuruddin hatta taqul lahu hadha. Who is Nuruddin that you say something like that to? And then he asks him this. I ask you this question. Who defended Islam before Nuruddin Zinki? It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if I die, Allah is always there. It's not about Nuruddin Zinki. This ummah will be saved as long as Allah is there. It's not me. Tawheed. Tawheed. Then they tell him, his commanders, we need money. We need a new army. We need a new army. Nuruddin Zinki was giving money in scholarship and to people that tons of, thousands of dinars. They said, please, those people sitting in the masjid worshipping day and night, they're sitting doing nothing. Please take the money you're giving to them so that we can use it to make an army so that we can defend them. You get the idea? Makes sense. The response of Nuruddin Zinki. Wallahi, very powerful. He says, he looks to that commander and says, you want me to take money from people fighting for me day and night with arrows that never miss and give them to people like you who fight only when I'm with you and your arrows hit and miss? Their dua is an arrow that never misses. And then he quotes a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. قال عن سعد بن أبي وقاص عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم in Bukhari that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, هل تنصرون إلا بدعائكم? Do you think that you attain victory except through the dua of your weak and righteous people? He says, their dua is a weapon that never fails. It's very easy for me to say this now. But when I'm defeated, when I'm about to lose everything, what I didn't. I'm going to stop I'm going to stop in 1 minute. Here, so, but please go. So we have a break, a commercial break. So please make sure to take this, right? And I'll tell you what it's about tomorrow. But like, please take something. Allah, it will take you just only 1 minute. Right? Right. So you see here that Nuruddin Zinki, the tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is really true. His study of hadith with Ibn Asakir really affected him a lot. By the way, one of the things he asked before starting the fights, he went to the half with Ibn Asakir and he asked, you know, Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, the 40 Nawawi hadith, right? Tell him, I want you to write me a hadith. A 40, you know, it's a book of hadith about what? The 40 hadith in jihad. Since I'm going to be fighting for the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first thing I need to know is what? How? What's the rulings? What's permissible? What's not permissible? It's not about my emotions or my anger, what my enemy does. What Allah says is permissible is. What Allah is not, is not. So I need to know. So write me a book of 40 top hadith that you collect as the top scholars, so I can give it to everybody. Right? One time they narrated how much he loved hadith. He was studying hadith, right? And in one of the hadith, they described the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam before the expedition, and the hadith said something, you know, on the side. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came mutawashshihan as-sayf. It describes the Prophet ﷺ came with his sword, but it describes the way. When you wear a sword, there is one you wear it around your waist, the other is you wear it diagonally, right? The belt. So it describes the Prophet ﷺ came out wearing the sword, you know, diagonally like this, right? They say next day, Nuruddin Zinki comes with all his commanders. Everybody's wearing the sword, you know, diagonally. So he was very adamant. Sunnah is to be implemented, right? He loved the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. By the way, he made the first hadith school in Damascus. And there is a reason. The Ismailis, they fought the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ because he said the companions are not reliable. So one of the ways that he revived the Ummah is what? The ilm, the science of hadith has to be completely revived. Even in Egypt. Egypt in Alexandria, there were two hadith scholars still there. Hafid al-Salafi and Tahir ibn Auf. One was Shafi'i and the other is Maliki. He communicated with them. Right, to try to keep that alive in Egypt. Right? So Nuruddin Zinki, as you see, he did not stop, even when he's defeated. Before I stop, and our last session will be shorter, give you one break and another session, one thing remains. I don't know if we'll be able to cover it today. This is a very interesting development. What about Egypt? Because you can see now Nuruddin unified Sham. And on a yearly basis, his power is mounting. On the other hand, Egypt was in such a disarray. Over the last 10 years, they say there was one wazir every month in Egypt. Egypt was falling into a decay. A wazir would come into power, another one would revolt, kill him and take his position. So they say in 1 year there was 13 different wazirs. And Egypt is very weak, taxed to death, economy is not good, although it's a very rich country, right? But it wasn't doing well. And the Franks started looking towards Egypt. It's an easy prey. And Egypt is very rich. If Nuruddin is powerful, they were considering Egypt is going to be our next. Right? So what we'll see next is the race, what we call the race to the Nile, and eventually what will lead to a complete new development, inshallah. So I will take a break, 15 minutes, and inshallah the last session will be shorter because we have Dhuhr Salah to be only 45 minutes. So Jazakumullah khairan, please don't forget to take this. It's 3-4 minutes. So Jazakumullah khair. See you later in 15 minutes. Assalamu alaikum.